you are absolutely in the right place at the right time. You're on the moral compass with Cornell Johnson. And hey, today we've got the very esteemed Lucy Price with us. She's a self-love and relationship coach. Lucy says, I help people create incredible relationships with themselves and others so she can exercise the toxicity. I like that word. I'm going to use it again. Sounds good coming off my tongue. She can exercise the toxicity out of any relationship. Absolutely. Lucy, how are you doing today?
I'm so good. How are you?
Listen, any better, I just couldn't stand it. Or I can be like the old man that you usually see around. Any better, I have to be twins to enjoy it twice as much.
Oh my word.
We're glad to have you on the show today.
I'm glad to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. And we're going to be talking about this show is named Bulllyology Part 2. Bulllyology 101 Part 2. We had Part 1 last night, and so we're having Part 2 tonight. And so I guess we're going to have Part 3 on Tuesday. But bullying is definitely a conversation that we need to have. We need to do all we can do to stop bullying. That's right. Absolutely. And so we're going to play the promo. And after we finish with the promo, we'll be back with the very eloquent Lucy Price. I was looking for a word to stick in there. I got to start reading again.
Eloquent. You can
eloquent's pretty good, though. It's pretty good, right? Yeah, I need to start watching Sesame Street or something like that, or reading Rainbow, something like that. Definitely.
Yeah, one more time around. Everything's slowing down, can't control it. Say that you're for me. Right now I need loyalty. It's hard for me to trust you. I've been here before this, I've been through the troubles. It's hard to let you in, I've been giving you the runaround. I double on the dosage, I don't need emotion, no. Right now we young and we dumb and we lit. Thinking back before when we was kids, yeah. I was caught up in the mission, yeah. And we live for the moment, respond to a calling. It's bigger than all of us, right to the wheels. Give anything to feel something new. High if I fall, no I did it going all in. At the time of my life, right for the squad. No lights through the fog, but we made it, yeah. I'll be good by the morning.
That's right. We're back with the very esteemed Lucy Price, the self-love and relationship coach. We're glad to have Lucy with us today. And I guess in that video, you could see a lot of things going on. You could see the kids that were dejected. You could see name calling, which is done a lot. And some people, they just do it for no reason. And we're here to talk about bullying tonight. We're here to talk about bullying, and Lucy is a self-help coach, like I said earlier, and so Lucy, we're gonna start the narrative. We're gonna start the conversation here about bullying. Is there something that you want to start talking about?
Yeah. So I think something that I was thinking about, and we talked about just before we hit the live button, was I think sometimes we never really know how often bullying can actually come up in our lives. That at least when I originally thought of bullying, I always had that vision, right, of school kids, of high school, the bullying that goes on in high school, middle school, elementary school. But bullying actually happens in so many different areas of our life that I think sometimes doesn't either A, get called bullying, or B, just is passed off as normal. And it's really becoming, I think, a problem. And one of those places is, for example, our family relationships, our close relatives, where people have something to say about your appearance, or people have something to say about your job, and nitpicking you and calling, names and calling it banter. But after a while, those things really get ingrained in your being, and you start to have a lot of opinions of yourself that are not supportive or kind or going to get you where you want to go in your life. And that's part of what really led me to want to have this conversation and come on and talk about this, because that's often what I talk about with my clients behind the scenes. Is that's when most people come to me, is when they're coming from a relationship of some sort, whether that's parents or romantic, and there's been, emotional abuse essentially that has happened within the relationship, and untangling the opinions that they've had against themselves because of the name calling, because of the side comments or the very direct comments that they've experienced. So that's definitely like kind of the place I'm leading from today. And I'm so excited to talk about more because it affects so many people. Like I'm very certain that everybody knows someone in their life that was affected by that.
Absolutely. I can start off with my bullying story. I told one of my bullying stories on yesterday, but another story about being bullied was we had this guy that used to live by us, and he was much bigger than everybody else. And I'm a big dude, but he was big dude, and he was older and he was stronger, and so he'd always play sports with us, and I'm laughing about it because there are so many funny things that came out of it, but it wasn't really funny at the time because we were kind of getting terrorized, And I mean, he'd like, the extra elbow, the hard elbow, and it was the thing of I'm trying to make you a man and all that. And or you play football and it's like, I don't want to catch the ball in front of him because I know I'm going to get hit like I'm in the NFL. And we're playing just pick up football. We hit hard enough, but I mean, he's really coming at you. And so, a lot of stuff came. It was like we couldn't be our regular jovial self because there was a certain way he wanted us to be, like boom, 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 boom. Y'all from Compton. We had to be like tough. And so if you weren't like that, all the time, because, of course he was mature. He was at that age, but, we're footloose, fancy free, definitely, and so I was a big practical joker. Let me tell you, I used to squirt people with water, all kind of crazy stuff, and he hated that. He called me a court jester, and I was tickled when he called me a court jester. It didn't bother me, but then I couldn't laugh because he was not playing. He was serious about that, and so that went on for a long time, really until he kind of like moved away. But he used to always like bully us, tear down a little basketball goals and stuff like that. And if any of my friends are watching, they probably snitch on me and tell.
You'll get an elbow randomly the next time you walk down the street.
That's right. Karma. They'll get just a random elbow. That's right. But yeah, that's something nice to have. And I know that over a period of time, we got used to it. It was just like, it was no big deal. We got used to it and we built up thick skin, but then a lot of people are not able to get used to that. And really, you should never have to get used to something like that.
Yeah. Well, like in those circumstances, right? I mostly work with women, but I have a few male clients and I do work with men. And a lot of the narrative that I hear from the men that I work with is pretty similar, in line with what you were describing, where there was some sort of male figure in their life that was trying to get them to toughen up to some degree. Like, you have to have thick skin, don't cry, don't show your emotions, like toughen up. This is what it means to be a man, or whatever it happens to be. When really at the root of it, it was bullying. It was degrading somebody. And whenever I hear those instances happen, the question I think of is, what are we actually trying to achieve here? Because yes, we're creating tougher skin maybe, but what's going on beneath that tough skin is a wounded inner child that is hurting and deeply hurting, and is probably in turn, either it can go a couple directions from that point too. Either, we hear these instances all the time where those who are bullied become the bully and they try and pass it on because that's what they know, or they completely shut down because they're in so much pain. Of course, there are other examples, other alternative endings that can happen, but those are the two I tend to see. And when I think about relationships too, especially the relationships between like father and son or mother and daughter, whatever happens to be. Like, I'm sure the thought process in the head is, I'm trying to do what's best for this child. Hopefully that's the thought process that's going on. But the result is actually your child is in pain. Like there's now wounding that's happened because of those instances. And you haven't built any intimacy with your child at that point, because they're never going to feel comfortable coming to you now, because they don't want to be told to toughen up. They won't share their emotions. They won't share the hard things. They won't open up emotionally due to these instances. And then we're just creating adults that face loneliness, that face depression, anxiety, other mental health issues from these instances that have occurred in their childhood. And it's just simply not healthy.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Lucy. And Lucy, let me ask you a question. Also, I was reading, I was reading where, excuse me, I was reading where you talked about boundaries, and so you're big on boundaries, and I thought about you know, bullying. Can you tell us what kind of cardinal sins does bullying violate in boundaries?
In boundaries, I mean, it really depends on the style of bullying, but at a very base level, emotional safety. At a very base level, emotional safety. And then in the instance that you described, physical boundaries, right? If they're physically coming at you, that is crossing a very physical boundary, and emotional boundary on top of that. So I would say those are the two boundaries that are ultimately crossed.
Okay. And it wasn't until I did this show and wanted to have these conversations that I saw there was two kinds of bullying, indirect and direct. I was always thinking, well, it's just direct. You know, it's like Spike on the Little Rascals. You know, he comes up to you, punches you in the nose, but there's actually one that's overt, one that's covert, you know? And so I guess that's kind of like behind the scenes when people talk about you to other people, and they create a atmosphere, you know, conducive to make you feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
You know?
I find that happens a lot with, in my experience, women. And that's what results in what I call sisterhood wounds, which is essentially a lack of trust between women, a lack of emotional intimacy due to unfortunate experience that have happened with either friends or women in your past, right? But the covert bullying is often something I see with women, where it's just, you know, it's just a subtle comment to a friend. And that subtle comment is like a match by dry wood, which ultimately causes a forest fire. Like it's not a small comment. And a lot of women unfortunately know what they're doing. And that's when that's when especially it's a problem. It's like, when you know what you're doing, you know you're hurting somebody. Like, and why? I just never, like, that's me personally. I'm like, I don't, like, I get it in terms of like when you've had wounding in the past, oftentimes people are reacting from a triggered place. So like these side comments that a lot of people end up saying, which ultimately results in bullying and ultimately results in like pain for people, often it comes from a triggered response inside. And that's something for that person to look at before they go and make all these side comments. But that's kind of the process that happens, especially, you know, covert bullying within a lot of female circles that I see.
Okay, awesome. Bullying is often downplayed, you know, as simple teasing, or boys being boys or girls being girls, to add a sense of normalcy to it. What are some other misconceptions that you've heard about bullying?
Misconceptions. That's a really good question. I've never thought of that. I think that's part of it. I think another one that I hear a lot, and I heard as a child, was, he's only picking on you because he likes you, for example. So I think that's another myth, and a very, very unhealthy one, because that's, you know, women then grow up to take up a lot of verbal abuse from men that they don't deserve, frankly. And that's the same comment of boys will be boys, right? It's just not true. So the one that comes to mind for me is like, he's picking on you because he likes you. And it's just cool. So we're raising women to then accept relationships where their partner might be verbally abusive towards them because boys will be boys.
Okay, I read an article in Psychology Today, and it said that bullies are not born, but they're made. that if normal aggression of a 2-year-old is not curtailed, that bullying remains a durable behavior style. So my question to you is, do you agree that bullies are made, or do you think that bullies are born that way?
I think that's kind of the never-ending nurture versus nature debate.
What came first, the chicken or the egg, right?
Yeah, the chicken or the egg. And so I don't have a very solid answer, because I think there are things that there are some things that people have done in this world that go beyond me, that like the pain that people can cause in the world is just astonishing, and I have no good answer, you know, if they were born that way or if they were made that way. I'm in terms of bullying, when I think of interactions at school, or maybe interactions within your neighborhood, like parents saying things about other parents, for example, bullying within companies or the church or whatever it happens to be, I would say those instances are more the nurture aspect, and or they just simply haven't been given enough consequences for their behavior. Every action has a consequence, good or bad, but if bullying is still being permitted into adulthood, then it raises the question, like, why are there not consequences for this behavior? So I'm more inclined to say nurture, but there are also just some people in the world where I sincerely don't know.
Okay. And bullying is so harmful because it relays the basic message that aggression and violence are acceptable solutions to problems. Has our culture, our movies, and our music taught us the way of the bully?
I think that our culture has taught us the appeal of aggression. So we see it on the media all the time, that news which are more aggravating, news that are more fueled by hatred or anger or polarizing views, tend to get more attention, which tends to result for a lot of companies in more money. But that's getting into a whole other thing about my opinion of society. But I think in terms of is it something that's what's the word I'm looking for? Perpetuated. I think that there is an inherent intrigue of aggression, an inherent intrigue of big emotions more than anything else. So I think, like, we see it in movies where there's an interaction that happens and someone aggressively stands up for somebody else. Like, there's themes in media, in society, where it puts fighting or arguments or interactions on a pedestal for entertainment. So I think, like, when we think about bullying at school, why does it happen? Like, in some cases, I think it's because the bully believes that they are getting liked. They're getting liked because it's entertaining for other people for them to pick on a kid or whatever it happens to be. So I think there is some sense in the media that big emotions are entertaining, and that might be perpetuating some behavior. But it's really a tricky question, because I do think that there are people largely starting to speak out against this on a larger level, and also it's still a very, very big topic that has not been dealt with and isn't, in my opinion, being dealt with enough right now in society.
Okay. Most bullies, basically, Lucy, most bullies grow out of it. Aggression becomes basically their social interaction. Antisocial kids become antisocial adults in many cases and produce another generation of bullies that commit crimes, batter their wives, abuse their children. What can we do to prevent this cycle from continuing?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing is if you've noticed that in your own life that you have been either a victim of bullying, or you've noticed these patterns in your friendships or your lineage, like the generations before you, I think that's a beautiful invitation, honestly, to look inwards at yourself and ask yourself, like, what are the beliefs you hold about yourself and other people? Are you treating other people kindly? Are you treating other people with compassion? And if you're not, why? What are your inherent belief systems that are causing these results? And that's when we get to go into the mindset work, as I like to call it, of shifting the stories that we're telling ourselves in our head and shifting how we are engaging out in the world. It comes from also shifting our inherent belief systems. So this is something that I think with people who have gone through that experience, I do think people who have gone through the experience of being bullied, they are more apt to do mindset work, but it's because they're trying to move through it, right? They're trying to let go a lot of the hurt that they faced in their lives. And so they're shifting their belief system about themselves into something more about self-love, something more about their inherent worthiness, their value. Because if they've been bullied, then a lot of the messaging they probably got in was they were not valued, they were not made to feel worthy, they were critiqued about something about them, which has resulted in this. So I think for people who have been bullied, they are more likely to do some of the mindset work and to do some of the emotional intelligence. I think for people who are the bully, this is when I think community accountability is key. So if you're seeing someone who is bullying, like that's not, don't stay silent about it. Like call it out, have a conversation with them. If you are someone, especially if you are someone that holds some sort of power in the community. And that could be simply like, if you're more of a figurehead, or if you have a more intimate relationship with them and you have more sway over their behavior because of that, like that's an opportunity as a community member to step up and to help them be accountable to their actions and behavior and start helping them shift their own mindset about what they feel is acceptable behavior, why they feel like it is, and work through probably some of their own history, baggage, trauma with relationships so that we can stop these cycles from continuing.
I agree. I agree. I know that in New York, you could be walking down the street and somebody can be getting assaulted. And the common thing is, mind your business, stay out of the business. That's not your business. You know, to me, when I, being reared in the South and just going to New York in the summers, I felt like Buford Pusser. I wanted to get my bat out and go to work. But then, I did have to be mindful. It seemed like it was more of a normalcy now. When we saw what happened with George Floyd, because it was an isolated incident, we saw people coming out from every strata of society, coming up and telling this guy, hey, get off of his neck, get off of, and so does it have to always go to that extreme before we actually want to step in?
I don't think so. Like this is where it gets into the complications of systemic problems in our society, right? Because there are also systemic issues that are causing a lot of these behaviors to change. So like my belief is that it shouldn't get to that point. Like a man died, like a man was murdered because of that. And even though people stepped in to try and talk out of it, it still happened. So like, I don't believe that it ought to get to that point. Clearly in this instance, like even that didn't stop him from getting off him, unfortunately. So it's my hope that it doesn't have to get to that point. And I do believe in most cases, it doesn't have to get to that point.
Okay. My personal definition of bully is somebody that makes you feel bad about yourself so that they can feel good. What's your personal definition of a bully?
Honestly, that's pretty close. I think that's pretty close someone who, I think that hit it. Like someone who makes you feel bad about yourself and causes emotional or physical harm without without feeling bad about it, and more importantly, feeling good about it for some sort of reason, whether that's inherent pleasure or desire to attain a certain social status.
Okay. I read something on your page earlier, and it was so, I love the metaphor. You said, I've had clients who've come to me holding heartbreak in their hands. I thought that was so poetic. I said, I thought she was a counselor. I said, I guess she must be a poet. But frozen and unsure where to go next. And so, and in your line of work, and you said that you've done this kind of work, well, you've done this kind of thing with domestic abuse, and we've been having domestic abuse has been a big subject for us lately this month, and you know, now bullying. Do you find it hard oftentimes to connect the dots for your clients, or does that have to do with the amount of trauma that they've been through?
Connect the dots as in why I think things have happened for them, or why I think, or where they should go next.
Like a treatment plan, basically. Yeah, like a treatment plan.
So I would not say that it's hard necessarily, but that's also because I've had the experience of looking for it now. So I have an idea of what I'm looking for in terms of these experiences. I think that sometimes it takes a little bit for someone to feel comfortable and for someone to open up. And that's why I like working with people for an extended period of time, because after like 2-3 months, like a lot more information is just simply given. Like we've had the time to develop the intimacy to share more about our experiences. So I think it's only hard when I just don't know a lot about the person, or I haven't heard a lot of their story, or there's missing pieces. But once I get to know someone, I would say it's relatively easy to help them connect the dots. Everyone's unique, everyone's different. Some people might have one experience that made them feel a certain way, and another person might have a very similar experience, but they don't feel that way. So there's definitely variation, but I think at this point, I've just had the opportunity to work with some amazing people and see the patterns, and intuitively feel when something is connected to something else, either by what they say or their feelings surrounding it. So for example, I had a client about a month ago who said that I'm having these thoughts about myself, like I'm not doing well enough, I'm going to get fired from my job. And I asked her, like, why do you feel like you're having these thoughts? And she's like, you know, I'm not quite sure. I kind of feel like I've always had them. And then I said to her, you remember that conversation we had about your dad and how your dad always used to say that you're not doing good enough in school, then that you're going to fail and you're never going to make it? Like, this is the same thing. This is the same reaction being played out here. And so like instances like that come up where if I know enough about someone's situation, it's pretty easy for me to say, like, is this connected to this? Are you feeling this way because of this experience that you had? Is this a habitual feeling that you're now continuing to feel because you've just always felt that way? So at this point, I would say it's relatively easy, but I think like anything else, it just depends on the situation. In terms of a plan going forward, it really just depends on the person. Some people might just need a few breakthroughs and a few tools and techniques to move through it, and they're good to go. Other people need some more untangling, and both are good. Both are perfect just the way they are.
And I found it interesting that you mentioned that how you built the bridge from her dad telling her, you know, you're not going to make it, you're not going to pass, you never pass, you'll never succeed, and so on. And then to get to this point as an adult. And so from hearing that, I would not see that as abuse, but then it was, because and so do you find a lot of times that, and I guess he might have said it nonchalantly, but that might have been just a part of his verbiage, you know, how he communicated based on how his dad communicated with him, based on how his dad communicated with him. And so do you find that a psychological seed from childhood can be planted that can sprout up and still be cumbersome to the adult later on?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think we carry on so much from childhood, so many stories from childhood. And oftentimes we aren't aware that we are, but we definitely are. Yes. I very much believe that.
Wow. That's something. I tell you what, that's something to think about. Also, I noticed that, so what would a bully comes into your office, or a known bully. Let me ask this question first. is the relationship between a bully and the target, is that some strange type of relationship?
That's an interesting question. I think that sometimes we have belief systems and patterns that might lead us to accept or tolerate certain behaviors in relationships, or to unconsciously attract certain relationships because it's what we know, it's what we're familiar with, but not always. And that's where it gets a little dicey, because if, for example, if someone has always had partners that have been verbally unkind to them, then they might not think on anything of it. So they might be willing to stay in relationships where that occurs, or they might think that that's all they are worthy of, for example. So there are situations in which people unconsciously go to similar styles of relationships time and time again, because that's what they've known. That's what they are comfortable with. Even if it's uncomfortable, even if it's hurtful, it's what you know. And your brain will always try to keep you in what you know, because it wants to survive, and it survives in the devil they know. So there are instances where that can happen, but there's also plenty of instances where someone could be minding their own business and not attracting that and not wanting that, but find themselves in a situation where they are being bullied and they are being targeted. So it's an interesting question. I think it's inherently interesting, like the relationship, but not for any particular reason. It's just unfortunate more than anything else. It's unfortunate that someone is being hurt. It's unfortunate that someone is hurting the other person and feels that that is the only way for them to feel validated in themselves. Like that's sad too. Like if you think you can only be validated by hurting someone else, then you've got to look at how you feel about yourself too, and your self-love, because that is definitely not what I believe true self-love is.
Okay. What kind of treatment plan? What do you do? Someone comes into your office and they tell you, "Hey, I've got a problem. I'm bullying people. I can't stop. I don't know how to talk to people." What do you do for someone like that?
So if someone came up to me and they were saying, like, I'm bullying people, I would ask them, like, what is your intention? That would be my first question. Like, what are you trying to get out of this? Are you trying to get recognition? Are you trying to get social status? Are you trying to feel better about yourself? Are you sincerely not able to have a conversation with someone because you feel uncomfortable? Like, what is causing you to do this behavior, to act out in this way? And it's different from a kid to an adult, right? Because a kid might be having a lot of problems at home, and that's how they get attention, is by yelling, is by being mean. And so they might be trying to do it for attention, for recognition, but an adult might be trying to do it for social status, because whatever reason. So I think it does depend on the age of the background of the person. But my initial question would be, like, what are you trying to achieve here? Like, what are you trying to fulfill by doing this? And then from there, I would go down a different path depending on what the answer was. Like, if it's someone who sincerely just doesn't have communication skills, then we're going to learn some freaking communication skills that does not involve degrading somebody else. If it's that they don't feel empowered within themselves, then we're going to look, okay, what are the beliefs that are causing you to not feel empowered within yourselves and act out in these ways? So it really depends on what the answer to the first question would be, but then I would go down a different path accordingly. It's like a choose your own adventure.
All right. Okay. So now let's flip the script, and someone comes into your office that's being bullied. Mm-hmm. And they say, "Hey, I need to get liberated. I need to get from under the bully's thumb. What do I do?"
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So in those situations, like, the conversation would start out the same in terms of, like, if they are they a certain age range? Like, are they in high school? Are they in a corporate office? What is the scenario in which this bullying is occurring? If it's a more domestic relationship, then the immediate questions are, how do we make sure you're safe and protected in this situation? Because that's important, like, are you physically safe? Are you at risk of anything right now from this relationship. If it is, I'm assuming this question is like real time, they are currently being bullied, correct?
Right.
Okay,
Correct.
cool. So that's the initial question, like, are you safe? If it's a more corporate setting, there are things you can do. There are steps you can take. You can go to HR. You can file a report against that person. I think a lot of people are afraid of doing something like that, but that's a different conversation. Then we gotta get into the fears of it. Like, why are you afraid of doing that?
That's right.
But you can, file reports against your bosses. You can make a formal complaint. And in a lot of corporations, you will be protected for that. You might think that something's going to happen, but most of the time you are protected depending on the work situation. Unfortunately, there's a lot of customer service positions that are not the case, and that's a whole other thing in and of itself. But if it's like a corporate job, oftentimes there are steps you can take. If it's more a friend or a more community aspect, then the question becomes, is there someone in your circle you can also talk to about this and get support in terms of like helping to adjust the other person's behavior while keeping you safe and supported? So there's just different action steps that people can take. If it's high school, I think this gets a little complicated too, because I don't think it's handled well in school. I don't think bullying is handled as well as it could be and needs to be. So that's kind of another conversation, but in general, it's what steps can we immediately take so that you stay safe and so that we can start actually dealing with the situation. Then we get into the realm of what boundaries can you set up right now to help protect yourself further. So can you block people on social media? Can you say, no, actually you don't have information to my life anymore? Like you don't have that privilege anymore. So can you block people? Can you move classrooms? Can you move offices? Can you get into a different position somehow? What boundaries can you set up in place within yourself? Like, can you, if there's people around you that are engaging with that other person and you, can you ask them to not invite you over to the same space as that other person and vice versa? So there are certain action steps you can take to actually physically and emotionally protect yourself distance-wise. But then the next process we get into is like, okay, how can we make sure what has happened does not get internalized within you and into your belief about yourself and how you care for yourself?
Thank you. Thank you very much. Lucy, what's the importance, and you deal with it a lot, what's the importance of self-love? How important is self-love?
Oh, it's so important. It's so important. So for me, self-love gives the opportunity for you to be your fullest potential. When you're in your corner, you show up so much differently to work, to your family, to your relationships, to the world around you. So it's essentially filling your own cup so you can fill the cups of others in your life. It's putting your own gas mask on before, serving others. It's taking care of yourself. And when you take care of yourself, when you love yourself deeply, you have the potential to have better relationships and to have more impact on the world around you in a positive way. So I find that there's a lot of instances where people, when they don't love themselves, don't even take opportunities that are available to them because they feel like they don't deserve it. They feel like they're not worthy of those opportunities, or someone else deserves it more than them. Whereas if someone loves themselves and is in their corner, they might feel more prone to taking those opportunities and to putting themselves out there in that way. Same for relationships. Like, someone who doesn't love themselves might be trying to look for love in other people because they want to just feel love. And that can get into a lot of dicey relationships sometimes, where there's a power imbalance or, some sort of bullying that can happen because they're looking for love. Whereas if you love yourself, then it's like their love is extra. It's more of a choice, and it's a love you can co-create rather than a love you're just trying to find outside of yourself. So I think self-love is a game changer. Even for people who are successful and have gotten there without self-love, they don't get to even enjoy it, like without loving themselves. So then it's like, what's the point?
What made you want to be a coach?
There were a few instances in my life where I just felt really called to support people in this way. So some of the instances was I got into my own toxic relationship a few years back, where I felt a lot of the time, and this is where we get into, like, when I said before I wasn't bullied. No, I don't know. Because I was in a relationship before where I felt really gaslit. I felt really lied to. There were boundaries that were crossed. There was dishonesty. And I remembered feeling like less of a person after that relationship, and being really in the depths of a depression I had not felt before. And there were some other instances in my life that led to that feeling. I was in a corporate job that wasn't fulfilling for me. And so all of these instances of essentially being unfulfilled and unhappy led me down a self-development journey and a self-love journey. So I ended up quitting my corporate job. I became a yoga instructor. I went and got my yoga teacher training and started teaching yoga, which then led to health and wellness, which then led to teaching fitness classes and stuff like that. And then I learned about health and wellness coaching, and I started doing that for a while. And I realized that really, like, the thing I was passionate about was loving yourself and feeling worthy and powerful within yourself, so that you could create the relationships and the life that you desire. And so after that, I was just like, yep, I'm a coach. Like, this is what I'm feeling called to support people in. So let's go. Let's rock and roll. Let's do it.
Awesome. What other superpowers do you have?
Well, I just started to learn how to make mugs and pottery. So if that's a superpower, I'll take it. I love cats. I'm a little bit of a cat whisperer, but other than that, I would say this is probably the bulk of it.
Oh my goodness. So Lucy, you're so knowledgeable. I can tell you're an awesome counselor. I mean, definitely an awesome coach. Yeah, you're very knowledgeable. And I really enjoyed this this interview. Let me ask you, what would you say about your journey so far?
That even through the ups and downs, it's all been completely worth it. That you have the potential to make your life be whatever it is that you want it to be. And I think I've really learned that through my journey so far, because I've had a lot of instances, like, I haven't had the worst life in the world. I'm a very, privileged person, but I've had a lot of emotional instances where I didn't know if I was good enough. I didn't know if I was capable of things enough. I didn't know if I was going to make it, whatever that means. And it really held me back for a while. And especially starting my self-love journey, and then the entrepreneurial journey of being a coach, I learned that even through the highs and the lows, like, if you have the capacity to hold it, you can create so much. Like, you can have whatever you desire, so long as you can hold everything that goes with it, the emotional downs and the emotional highs, everything in between. So if you can hold it, you can have it. If you have a dream in your life, if you are walking down your own self-love journey, like, you sincerely can have everything that you want. It might take some work and it might take some time, and that's okay. It's meant to. We're here in this world for a reason. I think we're all here to learn something and to grow in some way. So, it's beautiful. I definitely learned that I'm capable of more than I ever thought I was.
Lucy, where can people in the audience reach out to you if they need your services?
Yeah, I hang out mostly on Instagram. So if you look me up on Instagram, feel free to DM me. I don't mind at all. It's lucy.m as in Michaela.price. You can also reach out to me on my website, shiftyourstory.net. So I'm more than happy to jump on a quick call with people for free. If there's something they want to explore with me, I'm happy to go into that, and they can find that on my website.
Lucy, anytime you want to come back, listen, the door is always open for you.
Thank you.
You're an awesome guest. I know you're an awesome coach. And I'm so thankful you came today. You really made my day, and I've enjoyed talking to you.
Thank you. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I feel like so bright and lit up from this conversation. And I've loved chatting with you as well. So thank you so much for that invitation. And I can't wait until we have another conversation, another chat.
Absolutely. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, Lucy Price, self-love and relationship coach. Let's hear it for her. Yeah. Yeah, that's right. And to all of you out there, if you're being bullied, get out of it. Don't let anybody bully you. I saw something the other day, and I'll share it with you before I go. It said, you can't be mad at people for sucking the life out of you if you keep giving them the straw. So stop giving people the straw to suck the life out of you. Be empowered. Get away from those people, those toxic people. You've heard the coach. She's been here. She's talked about toxicity. And I like that word, toxicity. She's talked about toxicity. So basically, definitely get out of it. We have somebody that did chime in. Okay, Lori Baird. She says self-love is important for progress. And Lori was here last night. Lori, I didn't see you over there. Oh, Lori's watching. Hey, Lori Baird. But I'm going to have a show where I'm definitely going to have all you guys on it.
That'd be great.
Yeah. And you guys are so knowledgeable. Definitely. But Lucy, we hope you have a wonderful night. And I hope that your phone just starts ringing off the hook. Because it should, because you're an awesome counselor.
Thank you so much.
Awesome coach. Awesome
I appreciate it.
You are welcome. And that's going to be it for us tonight, guys. Thank you for tuning in. This has been The Moral Compass, and I'm Cornell Johnson.